Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Politically Incorrect Knitters. I am Deplorable Knitter, and I'm joined this week, as always, by the lovely Ann Pinkava. Hi, Ann.
Hello. And this week's episode is sponsored by Lynn of Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. You can go to chickenladyfiberarts.com and get 20% off your order with June's code SUMMER20PIK. And you can get lovely yarns like this, which is called Meh. Because when she first made it for someone, they didn't like it, but I think it's awesome. So you can go ahead and
I didn't know that that's
like
why she named it that. Maybe
right.
It was for me, and I went, eh.
Well,
that's too funny.
Their loss is a win for everybody else. So yes, go to her website, sign up for her newsletter. She sometimes sends free shipping codes to newsletter subscribers, and you can see her Flower of the Month yarn. She has a Song of the Month yarn. I believe she still has advent calendars. The Patriot collection is out, so there's all sorts of good things.
And don't forget to comment on this week's episode to win the one-of-a-kind skein that I still am going to try to figure out how to win. It's a lovely, lovely gray and neon rainbow.
It is beautiful. It is very, very pretty. It has all of these delicate neon colors into that gray. And yeah, I'm excited. It's her Surima bamboo base. So Merino bamboo, perfect for socks. It's exciting.
It is very exciting. And then now that you guys know all about Chicken Lady, I want to introduce you to someone new this week. We are joined by Carol, who heads up the Blanket for the Unborn, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Thanks for joining us today, Carol.
Thank you for having me. It's quite exciting, really, to be able to talk to some fellow knitters and crocheters and yarn lovers. When I came onto this project, I had started knitting again after, maybe I won't say quite how many years, but a long time. And I really just had to relearn. So basically I was just knitting and purling. And then I decided to go ahead and be adventurous and make an Afghan for my college-bound grandson and make them in approximately the school colors. So I was knitting, and it took several months because I'm very slow, and I was just relearning. And I would probably redo it if I had the chance, but I've gone on to other things. But while it was kind of an inspiration for me, because I wanted to think about him as I made the blanket. I wanted to make it very much something that he could treasure, hopefully, all of the rest of his life, and know that his grandmother made it for him and that she was thinking about him the whole time she made it. That was what was important to me. I got to thinking, because I'm very much a promoter in January, I would always post something on my Facebook page about Roe versus Wade. At the time, it was still very strong. And I got to thinking about all the numbers. So in my head, I started thinking, well, how long would it take me to do like a memorial blanket to have all the numbers of the babies that were aborted during Roe versus Wade so far, because it still had not been repealed. And so I started gathering the numbers and doing my research, and I realized, especially when I started figuring up that I'm going to hold this up. This is a square, and this is a knitted square. It's just a single knit only square, no knit, no purl, no fancy anything. That there was approximately 6,600 square stitches, 6,600. So I thought, wow. So the more I thought about it, I decided that every stitch, even if it served just one little tiny stitch, served as a symbol of an unborn baby. That how much would I need? Well, I figured it up and I thought, oh, not in my lifetime, literally. time I have
Right.
left, there would not be enough time. And I don't know, the thing grew organically. I decided that, well, maybe, I wonder if anybody else would be interested in helping with this project. I had seen similar projects dedicated to, for example, there was a big book about that thick, and inside were several thousand pages, and it just had in really tiny font, about an 8-point font, it had the word Jew in it, because it was supposed to be representative of the 6 million that were lost in the Holocaust. And that was a very impressive book. And then I had seen others where in honoring that particular situation, they had done, collected rubber bands, paper clips, all this stuff, and it would end up these huge monuments. So I kind of used that as a template, and I tried a few various things, and every January 23rd or 22nd, I would post something having to do with babies and the loss of the babies and the loss, the terrible circumstances, which to me, they were lost in. So I still kept going back to this blanket. And I had several skills from my working days, including knowing how to build a website and graphics, and just kind of because of the way I was raised, I knew about trying to motivate people. And I decided that I was going to open a website, and I called it the Neverborn blanket. I kind of decided to use Neverborn as my catchphrase. And as I did that, being a believer and knowing that our paths are guided, I decided to use an example that's found in Judges, the book of Judges, about Gideon putting out the fleece. God tells him to do something, and he's going like, I think it's God telling me to do this, and I think I want to listen to it if it's God, but how do I know for sure? So he puts out the fleece, and I don't remember which direction it was supposed to be, because it was like the fleece would be wet and all the ground around it would be dry. So that was a sign for him. So I thought, well, that's kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start forward with this project. And as I do, I will just let it be guided, whatever direction it's supposed to go. So if I wasn't meant to do it, I wouldn't get any kind of response. So I went on to, I developed a Facebook page. I had a website, and I put an ad on my Facebook page. And the ads allow you to be very selective with your audience. So I did kind of target the audience. I figured it would mostly be women, although I did include men, but I also knew it would be an older age group. So I started with like 35 up. When I did that, I also had finished a reply on my email. I got an email, and when they would send me the response from the ads or from my website, I would automatically reply. So I knew how to do all that kind of computer stuff. Well, it just took off like gangbusters. And I was just going, wow, I guess this is really supposed to happen. And I had set my goal based on the squares and how many, the 6,300, I think the average, because this is also the crocheted square, which came up later because people were saying, well, what about crochet? So I had to figure out what it would be for that. But the average is about 6,350 stitches per square. And okay, I figured that I needed 10,000 squares to be, within the range of what I was looking for. And so I thought, well, maybe I could get 10,000 people And, I was the kind of responses I was getting very quickly. I thought I just might be able to do this. The wonderful thing about it is there was people who pledged more than one, more than two. In fact, I have a whole list of about 25 women who have probably made more than 25. And one woman, and her name is Mary, made an astounding 3,000 squares.
Wow.
That's amazing.
She sent them to me about once a month. She'd send me a big box of them. And I was just astounded because they were all crocheted, and she didn't send them just like put together or any of the same amounts. And so many of the blankets I would take with the single ones I got, or somebody sent two, and I'd mash them up kind of as they first come, first serve, and I would match them up. I kept a record of everybody who sent them to me. I kept their name in an Excel file and their email. And that worked out nicely because I also was able at some point to, see if I have that here, when I would make up the final section, I put a number on it. And so their name would be assigned to that number. And, it just kept going. It kept me quite busy. This was all in my home too. So fortunately, with no kids at home and a fairly large home, we were able to use several rooms to coordinate all of this. The square here, this I will also say, if we'll get down to what I would get the squares in, and I would join them. And you can kind of see it. It's a ridge stitch. It's a single crochet ridge stitch, so that it left a nice little line along there. And then here's another one that I can put. This is kind of the panels that this one's going to join. You can see that the middle panel is blue and white, and the bottom and top panels are pink and white. And usually the colors were the knitted ones, and the crocheted were the white ones, because I found out, as not knowing, that the knitted squares were very stretchy.
Oh,
And,
right.
yeah. And so the crocheted ones seemed to help stabilize it a little better. So after I get 9 squares like that, the five white and 2 blue and 2 pink, I would put them together in a 9 square section, which was approximately 45 by 45, because the squares were supposed to be 15 inches square.
Sure.
And I don't know, this might be a little interesting to show you, because I may have to step back here a little bit. Okay, now I can see. Okay, this is one. And can we kind of see what it looks like?
Yeah. Wow.
Now, after that, and thinking about how I needed to display this, these are actually this is a 9 square section, and this is a 9 square section. They're meant to be worn kind of like a poncho, so that you can, I figured I wanted these in a march. I wanted them in a pro-life march, possibly some of the bigger ones like March for Life in Washington, because it was going to take over 500 people wearing the ponchos to even begin to show the nearly 63 million lives that were lost in the abortion.
Right. And that, helps your display issue too, that, do you lay the entire thing out on a lawn? How do you show, the magnitude of stitches? So that makes sense to have people march with them.
Right. So every section, every 9 square section is individual. I mean, it's never the same people. It's its own little work of art.
That's really cool.
Now, the thing is, and I'm so glad you invited me to come on, because I have kind of I started this in 2019. Okay, well, we know what happened in 2020 and 2021, and I had enough pledges, but I had over 2,000 people that were pledging, and I had all 10,000 squares pledged. And I thought, I was a little naive. I guess I thought they would all show up on my doorstep, but they didn't. And only a little, let's see, I've had 532 participants. Now, those are the ones who have actually mailed and sent them to me. And of course, 3,000 of those were from Mary in Alabama. And that's how also I identified people. I respected their privacy enough. I would put their first name, and I would honor them on my Facebook page and give them kudos and all of that by telling, who had sent them in this week. First, it started out the weeks, every week. And then it kind of gradually dwindled down, and it was every month. And about the past 6 months, it's been about every 2 or 3 months. I'll put a small list of people on there. So it's definitely dwindled down. But I'm only at about 70% of the blanket. I have, sitting in one of my rooms, I have 93 boxes filled with ponchos, 4 ponchos each. I had to also consider my abilities to handle something. And so it's a 16 by 16 box, which was just right for the 15 by 15 squares and put together. And so I have 93 boxes now. But of the 545 ponchos that I need, by the time I finish some of this assembly, I will only have 384. Okay. So that means I need another 161 ponchos, which comes out to, well, I'm just going to round it up and say 2,900 squares, 2,900, because I have almost 3/4 of the blanket done and accounted for, but I need another 25%. So I was hoping that anybody who listens to your podcast would be excited about and want to participate and join.
It's interesting because you did all of this advertising on all these different things, but the only reason I even heard about you is because it's actually the same woman that hooked me up with Anne. I had never talked to Anne, but this lady named Hinda, who back before COVID was going to do a crafting conservative thing, she contacted me and we talked. And then I just had lunch with her some weeks ago because she's now writing a book about abortion. And she's the one who clued me into the fact that you're even working on this project. I had never come across it or heard of it. And I find it really funny because Hinda, who is on the other side of the aisle from us, she's not interested in, not that she's not interested, but she is liberal and she is pro-choice. And here she is, she's hooked me up with one of my best friends. And now we're finding out about the blanket for the Neverborn, which I hadn't even heard of until I had lunch with her the other day, and she was telling me about her new project. And so it's just really funny how God works things out, because like how I would have never expected that I would have heard about it from her.
I will share with you something else, which to me was very surprising, because both in pledges, although I didn't get all of them, but in participants, and as I said, those are the ones who actually sent it in, it was California that is leading the numbers. I always found that pretty fascinating.
Well, California is a really big place. It's kind of like, here in New York. You think of all the terrible blue policies, but there's a lot of us here that aren't. And I think California is, pretty similar.
I think that's definitely part of it. And I happen to know a lot of the conservatives that were out in California. So, because I used to live out there years and years ago. But the other thing was I'm kind of getting out of my wheelhouse, as they say. And I would love to see a venue for this. As I said, I would like to see people marching, but I can't go up to and stand at the beginning staging area for the March for Life and just hand out blankets. I mean, sadly, I probably wouldn't see a lot of them again, because I'm not giving them away. I'm wanting to use them as a purpose, as a display to make a point. And, this is where this project differs from pro-life or anti-abortion, because those are the different sides of the same coin. This is a memorial. This is to honor those souls that were not born. And because I do believe that from the moment of conception, there is that little zygote of sperm and egg that creates a brand new DNA.
So, not to interrupt you, but I just saw something. So I never heard about you, probably because I'm not on Facebook ever. I'm an Instagram girl. And so I was on Instagram the other day and I saw this. They did a study where when the two meet, there's actually a flash of light. And I had no idea that that was actually a thing. And I'm like, how can people, I mean, people have all their own beliefs and whatever, but how can you not think that that is some sort of like design, like that,
Right.
that it's just
A literal spark of
thing.
life.
The conception, even at the moment of conception, with this brand new DNA, and maybe our science isn't quite there yet. I think it's getting closer and closer to where that you could actually take that DNA, and maybe even sadly from these poor aborted babies, and you could create what that person was going to look like. And I use the term person because I think that's really what it was designed to do. And you could, like this projection on the screen of, yes, this will be, and not to step on a controversial subject, yes, this is going to be a little boy. Yes, this is going to be a little girl. They're going to have, blonde hair or brown hair or black hair. They're going to be, different ethnic things, and it's there. It's in that DNA right then and there.
Yep.
Right. I mean, on one hand, that it would be a wonderful thing to see, what these children would have looked like. But on the other, I'm a little more concerned about how they're going in the future of I would say different quote birthing methods, that you have all of these people on fertility treatments and they have, like 30 different, eggs on ice. And like part of that is the choosing method between, which of these children need to be born. And yeah, I, if there's going to, we have sex selective abortions now, which are terrible. But I would be concerned with, ugly selective abortions. Sorry, kid, you're not good looking enough to live. You're out.
Well, see, I think
Yeah.
this is often where some of this is leading, since it is no longer being used for the medical purpose for which it was designed, for the health of the mother, and I would even argue against the fact that they say rape and incest, because I think we have biblical examples of both of those where people were born to those conditions, as deplorable as they are, that went on to become very important people. And I mean, by saying, and I'm not going to contribute this to myself, because I heard somebody from Live Action actually say it. And it's like, who are we to put a value on a life just because it was conceived in a horrible way? We're putting a value on that life, especially if that child can be given a chance in a loving home. Now, the other thing that might, I don't know, I'm not necessarily advocating motherhood. I mean, I am a mother, and I loved the experience, and I'm a grandmother, and I think it's wonderful. But not everybody is cut out to be a good mom. But that doesn't mean that once you've made that choice to become pregnant, whether you intended it or not, that you have to be a mom, because there are people out there who want a child and aren't able to have a child. They can't conceive, or maybe they just want that there's so much love in their heart. They want to share a household with a baby that's not perhaps wanted by its mother, but do not kill the child just so that you can have your freedom and be able to do what you want to do because it's inconvenient. And that's one of the biggest excuses given in abortion clinics. Well, it's just not a convenient time. Well, if you're a mother and that we got to admit it, no time's convenient.
No. And even though you may love your kids dearly, there are also days where you sometimes wish they would go away. And that's okay, because that's normal.
I told
But-
my 15-year-old daughter when she was that age, I said, you know, I'll always love you, but there's days I just don't like you. I mean, and we gotta be honest with ourselves as moms, but you know, that's how kids are. But it doesn't keep us from always loving them. So
yeah, and I'm with you there, but I also think that there's so many things that need to change and be made better. The foster care system, adoption, like everything is so hard, and you get people fostering who shouldn't, and people who want to foster who can't. Like there's just a lot of things that the whole system needs an overhaul.
there's another organization I support here in my community. I won't name it, but it's a wonderful program, and I don't see it in a lot of places, and yet it's just absolutely called for. They take at-risk teenagers, and that includes some of the older ones, not just up to age 18, which the foster care system tends to, put them out after 18. But it's even up into the early college age. If they are an at-risk teenager and they are pregnant, they want to keep their child, they take them in. They help them finish school. They give them, if they're a little older, they actually give them training to have a job that will keep them, it's paying, it's not working at the local hamburger joint. It's actually like being a certified medical assistant, something that will actually pay them. They teach them parenting skills. They all live together in kind of a group home. So they learn, social skills as well. They have a self-sustaining gardens, and they teach them to cook. So to me, it's a wonderful organization. And I would like to see more, that would encourage the girls who want to keep the baby, and maybe their parents are against it, or their boyfriend or whatever, but they want to, because in their good conscience, they can't have an abortion. So to have places like that, and wouldn't our money be better spent in something like that than how it's being spent to try to fight, fight abortion? I mean, not fight abortions, but fight for pro-choice.
Yeah. There's an organization that Ann and I have, one of our friends is a volunteer with them, and it's called Let Them Live. And their main thing is that 73% of abortions are generally due to financial reasons. The person can't afford to have a baby. They don't have a job. They can't pay their bills, and taking on another child would be a burden to the family, to the parent, and that's what they do. They work with the mothers to get them the funds they need to make them secure so they can have the baby. And they do, I don't know that they're as extensive as the thing you're talking about, but they do a lot of that.
Right. I think that they will, they'll pay for housing, and that they'll have someone who mentors these women, but they don't, as far as I know, they don't have like a specific home for them that they'll like pay your, and sort of help you find a place if you need to, that sort of thing.
This sounds like it's probably for even older women, perhaps.
Oh, it's for anybody who needs help and is considering abortion. Their goal is to help the women so they can have the babies.
Yes, there's several organizations out there that can be supported, and maybe they're not being pushed out front enough for people to realize that they were even there, because I've seen people very snidely make remarks. Well, yeah, well, I bet if we asked you to do this, you wouldn't do it, or you want to take the child, well.
Yeah, I love those comments where they're like, oh, you hear about Christians and pro-lifers caring about the baby until it's born, and then they don't want to do anything after it. And it's like, are you sure? Because I think you just made that up. So,
Right.
So it's just
And-
a way for them to just, and let's face it, girls, this is a type of attack on faith in our belief, because if we believe in life and we want to support life in any form, these are attacks against having a faith and a belief in a creator. And it's like, well, not in my world, I can do what I want, which puts them down, to me, as far as I'm concerned, on the level with animals. And yet there's a lot of animals out there that are better moms than what we find.
I know. And part of it too, I mean, there's a sort of independence in it, but there's also an enforced loneliness. There's no one there to help me. There's no one who wants to help these women, so these women have to have abortions. That sort of mentality of, they don't know about these organizations. They don't know that there's a support system for them. And also, I mean, that part of it too is it ends a life, but it also cuts somebody out of your life. It cuts your potential children out of your life too. So, people, that having more people is good, having close family members is good, and but seeing additional family members as a burden, as an expense, and not that, it's not a burden, an expense, but that's not the focus, that you can get help and you can make it work. Like having that sort of mood shift from, you have a kid and your life is over, to, no, wait, your life can be better for this. You just have to be able to see new possibilities.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of areas that definitely more education is needed. And where that comes from, the source of where that comes from has to be, well, it's not coming from the government, and it won't. I have one other thing that I want to emphasize before we got on to any other topics, and that's, as I said, with this project, not only do I need more squares, but I need somebody or whoever, lots of people, lots of suggestions on what I can do to get this out in a venue. What I would see is there's a lot of high schools, there's a lot of even colleges that go to these marches, and a lot of churches that probably send a lot of members. And if whether it be 10 people from each state, or whether it be 500 people from one big group, that would like to wear the blanket, I will see that it gets to them, and explanations and all of that, because I definitely would love to see this in a venue of some sort. I owe it to the women. I owe it to the 500 women, 532 participants, and hopefully more, that have sent these squares to me. I feel a real obligation there to try to help this be seen, because that's what I was telling them it was going to happen. So I want to keep my word.
Right. And part of it too, when you were holding up the squares, that it seems that you have very specific colors that you want done, like it's not just whatever scraps you have, that you have specifications, so they all go together as a whole.
Right. That was supposed to be the general rule. It was supposed to, I did within a range of well-known brands. I'd say, well, you can use this brand and use this color. And that, as you very well know, even a pink, even a white in a different brand is slightly different, or a blue, and yes, some people didn't read the directions. I do have a box of squares that has big chunky wool and camouflage colors and bright yellow and purple and orange. And I'm going, I know in their heart they did what they wanted to, but you know what I've been doing with those is I've been reworking them into Afghans, and I've been giving them to this organization that I'm telling you about as
Oh,
an
sure.
Afghan for the that are raising the babies,
Mhm.
or where the mothers are staying until they're baby. Oh, they don't just kick them out. Then, by the way, they keep them for a year.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah,
That's really awesome.
and they're opening up a brand new house soon too. So it's going to even be more available. But anyway, yeah, I try to get them to that. Or I do have. There is a children's hospital just about 3 miles from me too that I can put the rather odd squares into. It's just those people that didn't read directions, but then I guess we know people that like that, and it doesn't have to be precise, but close enough. I've learned to be very flexible with this project.
Yeah, there's so many different things that can impact the size and like even with the best intentions, I'm sure that they come in smaller, bigger,
Exactly. I mean, everybody has a different style, a little loose, a little tight. And that's the nice thing about the squares is they can be stretched just enough to fit the one next to them. And that's why the little ridge stitch has helped kind of keep them in line. And it all turns out looking pretty square in the end, except for when you hold it up. Actually, because of the weight, it does tend to look a little more rectangular than square. But that's just the way it all turned out. And now it's the next step, find a place to show it and use it as an educational tool if necessary. So,
Sure.
Yeah. So when you started your project, you said you started in 2019. So what was your original stitch goal?
60 million.
Oh,
So
okay.
it increases by very close to 1 million every year. And
Okay.
as we know, Roe versus Wade, even though it was repealed as a national law, and it doesn't stop the states from making the laws that they want regarding abortion. And right now that's pretty well 50-50 as well.
Yeah.
Somebody said that they a blue state will bring a van or a mobile clinic to close to the edge of their state and then advertise in the red states.
Isn't that horrifying? So I don't know what your experience is, either of you living in red states, but here in New York, when they passed the thing to allow people to abort up to 9 months, they were cheering. And I could not believe the depravity of these people who were cheering to kill babies up until they could be born. Like, and so I'm sure my state's one of the ones that's like, hey, I got a bus. You guys want to come on over? Like, it's so messed up.
I know. And that age, there's a lot of different between as far as faiths. I don't know what Christian pastors use as a reference. I do know what the Jewish rabbis use as a relation is 40 days before they consider that it has a soul and is viable, but they still don't like the abortion except in the case to save the life of the mother. And that's the big thing. But most of these abortions, as I stated earlier, it's just inconvenient. It's not a good time. So, that to me is a lame excuse. It's like, well, you found the time to make the baby. So I'm sure quite a bit older than either one of you. And my mother was always very strict, and it was always, sit up straight and keep your knees together, and I'm sitting there going, later in life, I think that took on a whole new meaning when you're out.
It's funny, but after the whole Roe versus Wade thing last year, I was posting stuff about like, hey, take some personal responsibility. If you're going to do certain things and you don't want to have a baby, plan ahead. And people got so angry at me.
Yeah.
And they were like, what about rape? What about this? What about that? I'm like, okay, if you take all those cases you've still got like 90% or 95% that if they had just made better choices going into whatever situation they were in, we wouldn't even have to talk about it.
Right.
You know
Hey,
what I mean?
pass out free birth control. I mean, I know some people have trouble with saying, no, we don't believe in birth control, or we don't think we should use this, or we only have certain ways of birth control. But hey, again, I think it'd be a lot cheaper to pass out free birth control than it would be to have to put up all these marches pro-choice and
Yeah.
everything they do to support that.
And the difference in the birth controls too. Yeah, there's different feelings in different religious groups or whatever about like you can't use the pill or you can't. That's beside the point. We're not living in a world anymore where we can debate those little things. We need to unfortunately we're past that. We need to stop killing the babies. And so what can we do to make it so there's not babies to kill? Like that's kind of how we have to look at it, is
Right.
even if people don't necessarily agree, unfortunately.
Let's face it, I think we're in a war. I think it's a spiritual war as much as it is a political war, but you have to fight for that life. And just it's too easily disregarded. It's too easily thrown away now. And it amazes me when you said people were cheering. I'm not surprised, but it's disgusting.
It is.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, no, it's not surprising anymore. I mean, you watch enough news and stuff, people will take joy in the most depraved acts. I mean, it's June, we see all kinds of stuff on our TVs this month that I would never ever allow my children to even be around, and they're cheering for it. So yeah, it's so disturbing.
I think it shows, and again, not to totally drag the conversation off the rails, but I do that. That we see this sort of disregard for life everywhere. You see disregard for life in abortions. You see disregard for life in the disabled. We have all of these reports from different places, medically assisted suicide. That I just saw the numbers. 1 out of every 30 deaths in Canada is medically assisted suicide. And it's 1 out of every 22 in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands just passed this wacko bill that they had this law in about 2002, 2003, I think, where basically that you could only create life, you could only create fetuses for the purpose of pregnancy. That if you're going to, have a sperm and an egg and put them together outside of a womb, then that is because you want to implant it so someone can be pregnant, for fertility things. They passed a law saying that, actually it's fine if you do it for medical experimentation, so long as you kill it after 20 days. And which is astounding and shocking and evil. But that you see this disregard for life again at both ends of life. From the, like I said, number 1 in 22 people in the Netherlands die of medically assisted suicide, and they also have this disregard for infants. It's a terrible thing.
You're saying this, and all I can think of is our friend Bone, who her mantra was, if you don't value life at the beginning stage, you can't value it at any stage, or something along those lines. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So now we're starting with it's okay, these people are old, their quality of life is bad, we'll just help them along. And soon it's going to be, you're disabled, you are a drain on society. There's going to be so many factors that they're going to
they're suggesting death in Canada for if you're poor, if you're homeless, if you're in an old folks home, if you go up to the hospital, that apparently, and this is just awful, that according to, it's a national health service in Canada, but the doctor, it's their job to bring up medically assisted death first before the patient is like, I don't know, I'm feeling real bad, maybe I should die. It's the doctor that says, so ever think of death? That's not health. Health is not death. Just gotta put that right out there.
And if I can speak to the hypocrisy of this, if we were to take a newborn cat, kitten, and take a hammer and crush its skull, can you imagine the outrage? I mean, I love animals, believe me, but if they value the life of animals more than they do of their own species. And we are the only species who makes a deliberate choice to kill a baby in the womb.
Yeah. And
that
you're
makes
totally
us-
right.
Yeah, it almost makes us a little less than the animals. I mean, and we're not supposed to be. We're supposed to be elevated. We're God's creation. We're supposed to be able to respect life. And it's terrifying, but the world is kind of upside down nowadays.
It
Evil
is.
is good and good is evil.
Yep. And if you don't go with the accepted science or whatever they're saying, then you're the one that's wrong. And it truly is a spiritual warfare at this point. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. But you're totally right with the animal thing. I mean, you got PETA who will come out for like any animal out there in the world, but I bet you a lot of them are like, hey, yeah, abortion's fine. That's no big deal.
Though, I mean, to be fair with PETA will both tell you that you shouldn't be allowed to have animals, because you shouldn't have pets, because that is awful and cruel. And they will also, like, a PETA animal shelter will euthanize like at an astronomical rate as opposed to just a regular city, shelter. So,
Someday, Anne, we'll have to talk about why you know all that, but not today.
PETA sucks. I'm just saying. Anyways, sorry.
I won't tell my dog Freckles about that, because she was a rescue dog.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we're big fans of rescues here too, actually. But
right. Not like you sometimes hear about, just horrible, mothers who are like, I didn't need to adopt you. And you're like, whoa, don't actually say that to kids. But I can just imagine you turning to your dogs like, you could have been in a PETA shelter. You ever think of that? Huh? Think that next time you chew on my shoes.
Oh, man. So, is there anything, Carol, that you wanted to tell us about that we haven't had on?
I think I've pretty well covered, kind of the basis of why I did this and where it's at right now and what I would like to see moving forward.
Right. And
I'm hoping that, I think you put the slug and the information on there for me about the website. And at the website, people can sign up. It's just, like I said, it's just first name and state. And I only did the states because I was kind of curious to see which ones came forward. Sure. And, kind of do the pledge, and please don't pledge 50 if you're only going to make one, or if you're not going to make any. I don't count the pledges anymore. I've been just counting the ones that I get.
Right.
Have you gotten them from all the states? Are you missing any states?
All but 2.
And can you tell us which ones?
One is Rhode Island.
Okay.
It's very tiny. And the other one is Hawaii.
Okay. I don't know if we have any viewers in Hawaii. We might have some in Rhode Island. So maybe we have someone that's watching that can come through and fill the last 2 slots for that. That would be cool.
Or if you know someone from Rhode Island or Hawaii, you could just tell your friend, be like, hey,
we need you to knit this one. Just knit 1 square and crochet 1 square. That's all we need.
Now the other one might actually be, if it's not Hawaii, I think one woman did it, and when she sent me a note, she said, this is for my daughter, and she lives in Hawaii. And I thought, oh, well, okay. So, but it might be North Dakota, because I remember also being thinking to myself, well, there's hardly any population in some of those areas.
That is true. Us Dakotas are always lagging behind when it comes to national membership.
Yeah, well, I took into consideration, we've been through South Dakota, loved it, loved what's the springs or the Sioux Falls.
Oh, yes.
Yes, beautiful town, loved it. So that we were making a circle trip when we were traveling through there. But anyway, it was, it's pretty desolate out there. Miles and miles. So, but other than that, I would say that having, just getting a few more of the squares and finding the venue is next on my list of getting this out there, and a little public relations. And the one thing about my Facebook page is a lot of people, when I post, they share it. So that's good. And, I'm hoping even that this podcast, if Facebook is allowing me to put up the link when it's posted, that they'll watch it and share it.
Facebook hasn't banned us in a while, so it probably will work just fine. So,
and to repeat your information again, it is Neverborn blankets.com.
Blanket, just one
Blanket.
T. Blanket.
Okay.
Because think of it as a big blanket. It's the big blanket, not
right.
Yes, it's a bunch of individual blankets, but it's the neverbornblanket.com. And my email for that is memorialblanket@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's all one word. So
and I'll put the links in the description.
Yeah, all that information is on the website, including, the contact, and a lot of the story is there too as well, and the instructions. But when you sign up, I send further instructions that are just because it gives a little more information. It doesn't give a lot more information, but the instructions are on the website for either crochet or the knitted squares.
Sure. And it's also Neverborn Blanket on Facebook?
No, it's
sorry.
It was frustrating because I wanted to keep the name consistent, but some things were already taken. You know how that goes. No, I'm sorry, you can't use this name. It's already being used. So I believe, although it's in the link, I think it's called Big Baby Blanket.
Okay, well, I'll find that link and I'll put it in the description so that everybody can find you.
Thank you.
And on the website, there's the form where you can pledge to do the blanket. I did that, and then I promptly realized I had none of the colors I needed to do it. So that's what's been holding me up personally. Right. But if you guys want to join in, you can pledge. The instructions come up. It's really very easy to follow. And then that way, you can get in on the thing too. And if you know somebody, if you, like Carol said, if you have a huge church group that goes to the marches, or a school group, or, you know of someone that can help her get this out into the public, feel free to reach out, let her know. If you're confused about where to find her, you can always ask us. We will tell you. But if you can get in on it, because it's a pretty cool project, and it's amazing to see how much you've put into it, and it's awesome how it's coming out.
I let it grow as it wanted to. I didn't do too much real pushing because I wanted to see just what would happen. And again, the 2 years of COVID kind of threw a wrench into a lot of things. And I would have thought, I guess I should have promoted and say, well, you have to stay home. You might as well knit. But I kind of wanted it to grow on its own, because it really is only important that it's coming from the heart. And I've gotten a lot of notes that were tucked in with the squares when they arrived about how much this has meant to people that are doing these things. And a lot of them, because they've lost children to abortion, either through their own children, or just themselves and they regret it, or they just feel powerless to do anything about what's going on. And this gave them a feeling that they were doing something. And that's important. And that's why,
It is.
that's why it's so important to me to get it out there.
Right.
So
Yep.
we'll just see. It's
Yeah.
not really in my hands. It is, but I'm just kind of guiding it, and I'm kind of guiding it whichever way it's leading. So that's all I can do. I'm just kind of the coordinator. Appreciate, thank you for having me on and letting me talk about it. And hopefully some of your listeners will be inspired to do something as well and to help.
No, you are doing just an incredible work. I know you're saying, oh, I'm just a coordinator, but still to coordinate such a large project between so many people, and then to, do up all of the seams of all of these squares and house them and care for them and, have a number system for them. It is quite impressive.
Well, thank you. I did know some of the Excel has become my Excel and numbers are my favorite programs to work with right now, and they really help me do a lot of this. So,
Right.
And I do try to acknowledge every person who contributes at some
Sure.
point.
That's awesome. So like we said before, if you want to get in on this project, make sure you go to neverbornblanket.com, check it out, sign up to do your squares. You don't have to do a bunch of them. If you feel moved to, awesome. If you want to make one, that's wonderful too.
Yes.
Check out our sponsor, Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. Use the code SUMMER20PIK for 20% off your yarn. Just remember, you can't use this yarn for the blanket. There's a list of approved yarns. Please check that out before you start your squares. And thank you so much, Carol, for joining us today. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So much.